5 years ago, I completely dropped off the grid because my brother got my fiancée pregnant. Fast forward to today and he's lying in a hospital bed in a coma, and my parents are actually begging me to step into his shoes. Looking back at that time, it hits me how the worst kind of stabs in the back always catch you completely off guard. My name's Owen Vale. At 27 years old, I was making a pretty good living as a textile engineer for a mid-sized manufacturing outfit, just putting in the work and setting myself up for what I figured was a secure life. By that point, Marina Sis and I had been a couple for 3 whole years. She worked as a wedding planner, which is pretty ironic when you think about it. Her whole job was organizing perfect days for other couples, and our own big day was exactly 1 month away. From where I stood, everything was going flawlessly. Honestly, that's the part that still messes with my head sometimes. I didn't overlook any warning signs, I didn't shrug off some bad feeling in my gut, or hey, maybe I really was just completely oblivious. Now, my family setup was always a bit intense. Dorian was my older brother, and he was always the golden child who could do no wrong. He was 30 back then, pulling shifts at our family's construction supply outlet, and my parents basically worshipped the ground he walked on. The guy was just naturally charming and full of confidence, the type who could walk into any room and instantly run the place. As for me, I was just the spare son, the dependable one who stayed out of trouble because I already had my act together. I come to terms with that whole family dynamic a long time ago, or at least I thought I had, until everything changed on a random Tuesday when my mom called me up. "Owen, can you swing by the house later tonight? We've got some final wedding stuff to sort through." I was right in the middle of checking over some production schedules at work, but I told her I'd be there. I figured she just wanted to go over the seating chart or see if we needed to squeeze in a table for some distant relative I'd never even met. Marina and I had pretty much locked down all the main details already, but my mom just loved feeling like she was part of the process. After wrapping things up at the plant, I picked up some dinner and pulled into my parents' driveway around 7 p.m. It was the same modest 2-story suburban house where I grew up, a place that honestly should have felt safe and familiar to me. But the second I stepped inside, my dad was standing there in the kitchen. He gave me this really bizarre look that I couldn't quite figure out, then just gave a quick nod and turned right back to whatever he was doing without uttering a single word. "Owen, we're all in the living room," my mom called out. I started walking down the hallway, still mentally debating wedding stuff, probably getting ready to stand my ground on our choice of table centerpieces or some other completely minor detail. But the moment I crossed into the living room, my entire life flipped completely upside down. Marina was sitting right there on the sofa, which by itself wasn't weird at all since she visited my parents all the time. What made me stop dead in my tracks was seeing Dorian parked right next to her, sitting way closer than any future brother-in-law ever should. My mom was sitting across from them in her armchair with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, and my dad had followed me in from the kitchen, standing right by the doorway like he was making sure I couldn't leave. "Owen, please take a seat," my mom said, keeping her voice incredibly level and tightly managed. I looked over at Marina, then shifted my eyes to Dorian, but neither one of them would look me in the eye. "There's something we really need to talk about regarding the wedding," my mom kept going. Right then, I caught a detail that changed everything. Marina had her hand resting over her belly, not just casually, but in this protective way, like she was shielding something. At the same time, a look crossed my mom's face that I had never seen on her before. It wasn't anger, it wasn't disappointment, or any of the usual tells I'd spent my whole life learning to read. It was pure pity. I refused to sit down. "Owen, please," my mom begged again, pointing toward the empty seat. I managed to keep my voice surprisingly steady when I demanded, "Just tell me what's going on here." Marina finally lifted her head to look at me, her eyes completely bloodshot from crying. But there was a look in her eyes that went way beyond just tears. It was a heavy mix of guilt and total defeat. Dorian cleared his throat and chimed in, "Look, man, there's really no gentle way to put this." I just shot back, "Then just say it." The silence that took over the room felt like it dragged on for an eternity. Finally, Marina spoke up, her voice nothing more than a faint whisper. "I'm pregnant." For a split second, a ridiculous wave of confusion hit me. I mean, we talked about having kids eventually, Sure, but definitely not until after we got married and got a bit more settled. But then I looked at how tight she was sitting next to Dorian, and how his hand was resting on the cushion right between them, barely an inch from her leg. And right then, it clicked. It's Dorian's baby, she admitted. In that exact second, I watched my entire future completely shatter right in front of me. I couldn't move a muscle, and I couldn't find any words. My brain was desperately trying to process what she just said, but it felt impossible to wrap my head around. It just didn't make any sense. We've been. Marina's voice trailed off into nothing before she tried to explain herself again. We never planned for this to happen. We really did try to put a stop to it. I asked, how long has this been going on? And honestly, my own voice sounded completely foreign to me. Dorian shifted around uncomfortably on the couch and said, for about 6 months now. 6 months, half a year. My mind instantly started doing the math. If she was 3 months along, that meant they'd been sleeping together for 3 whole months before she even conceived. They were doing this before we ever mailed out the wedding invitations, and before we even put down the deposit on the venue. Where? I demanded, even though a sick feeling in my gut already knew the truth. Marina's complete silence told me everything I needed to know. In my apartment, I stated completely blankly. You guys were doing this right in my own apartment. Owen, listen to me. She started. It all flooded back to me. All those times I had to travel out of town for work, sometimes leaving for a week at a time. I'd come home to her waiting there with a smile, asking all about my trip, while the whole time this was happening behind my back. We just couldn't ignore the way we felt, Marina pleaded. And the sheer nerve it took for her to say that out loud almost made me laugh out loud. I know the timing is absolutely awful, but we just can't fight a connection this real. I just echoed her words back to her. A connection this real? You're carrying his child. My own brother's kid, conceived in my own home, all while you're planning a wedding with me. Dorian finally opened his mouth, and his tone was so casual you'd think he was just talking about a football score. Come on, brother, you've got to understand that when feelings get that intense, you can't just brush them aside. We really did try to fight it, but... I cut him off right there, turning my gaze over to my mom. She had been sitting there the entire time, just listening to them describe how they'd been stabbing me in the back for half a year, and her face showed absolutely everything. What? Sympathy? Understanding? But definitely not for me. My mom looked right at me, real careful with her words, and said, Owen, I know this is a bitter pill to swallow, but the wedding is off and Dorian and Marina are going to be a couple now. They've got a baby on the way, and we just have to accept how things are because they're truly in love. I just stared at her, completely dumbfounded. Accept how things are. She kept going, look, you're still young, you'll find somebody else. But they have a kid to think about now. Then she glanced over at my dad, who was still practically glued to the doorway, looking at absolutely anything in the room except me. Family comes first, Owen, she said. We've got to stand behind them. And right there, the light bulb went on. This wasn't some family intervention or a confession to clear their conscience. This was them laying down the law and telling me the deal was already done. They weren't looking for my forgiveness. They were basically telling me to get lost. And my dad, the guy who literally taught me how to ride a bike and helped me haul my stuff into my first apartment, just stood there like a statue, silent and completely useless. Inside my head, everything went entirely cold and calm. You know what? You're absolutely right, I said, keeping my voice real quiet. Family does come first. I actually saw my mom's face relax a little bit, like she genuinely thought I was about to be reasonable and play along with their little plan. And that's exactly why I am completely done with every single one of you, I told them, turning right toward the door. My dad actually stepped out of the way to let me walk past. Owen, don't be so dramatic, my mom shouted after me. We can sit down and sort this out like grown-ups. I stopped dead in my tracks right at the doorway and turned back around to look at the whole pathetic bunch of them. There is nothing to sort out, I said. You made your bed. Now you get to sleep in it. I walked straight out of that house, and when that front door clicked shut behind me, it had this heavy, final sound that just echoed down the quiet street. I knew right then I was never stepping foot on that property again. That very night, I went back to my place, the exact same apartment where they'd been sneaking around behind my back, and I started systematically wiping my old life off the map. I blocked every single number. Marina, Dorian, my mom, my dad, and honestly every mutual friend who might try to step in and play peacemaker. The next morning, I changed my cell number entirely. I locked down all my social media, set everything to maximum privacy, and scrubbed anyone connected to that entire world. 2 weeks later, I turned in my notice at work. A month after that, I packed up a truck and moved 800 miles away to a state where nobody knew a single thing about my name or my past. What would you do in this situation if your entire family turned their backs on you like that? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Anyway, that was 5 whole years ago. Fast forward to today, I'm 32 years old, sitting in my own corner office at a major textile corporation where I run the show as a senior production manager. I pull in double the paycheck I used to make. I've got a solid team of 15 people reporting to me, and just last quarter we blew our targets out of the water by 18%. I also put myself through therapy. And I mean real, professional therapy, not just complaining to buddies over a couple of beers. I spent 2 straight years unpacking that betrayal and sorting through all that deep family dysfunction. I had to learn how to trust people again, and I finally realized that what they did to me wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of theirs. For the past 8 months, I've actually been seeing a really great girl named Iris. She works in graphic design, and we met when she accidentally grabbed my coffee order at a local shop. We're taking things nice and slow. She knows I comes from a pretty messy background, but I haven't handed her all the ugly details just yet. Maybe I'll open up about it down the road, or maybe the past is better off staying buried. Up until recently, I hadn't heard a peep from my family in 5 years. Not a call, a text, an email, or even a rumor through old friends. Just total radio silence. Sometimes I'd wonder if I ever crossed their minds, but mostly, I didn't care. I built a great life all on my own, and that was plenty for me. But then, on a random Thursday evening, my phone started buzzing. It was an unknown number, and I almost let it go straight to voicemail since I get a ton of spam. But some random gut feeling made me swipe answer. "Hello," I said. "Owen? It's Mom. Please don't hang up on me. Something terrible has happened." Honestly, I should have slammed the phone down right then, blocked the number, and gone right back to my night. But I didn't. Call it pure curiosity, or maybe just old muscle memory from all those years of being the dependable son who always listens. "I'm listening," I said, keeping my voice completely flat. Her voice sounded way older than I remembered, and incredibly strained. "It's Dorian," she said. "He was in an accident. A really bad one 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. And she was just now picking up the phone to call me. That told me everything I needed to know about where I still ranked on the family totem pole. Dead last, as usual. "Drunk driving," she kept going. "He wrapped his car around a tree going 70 miles an hour. Owen, he's in a coma. The doctors don't even know if he's ever going to wake up, and even if he does, the brain damage is severe. He'll never be the same guy." I sat there and felt absolutely nothing. No happy satisfaction. No deep pity. Just this cold realization that bad actions eventually catch up to you. "Why are you calling me?" I asked. "Marina is completely drowning," she whimpered. "The kid is 4 years old now, and he won't stop asking where his daddy is. The medical bills are stacking up like crazy. The family business is going under without Dorian there to manage it, and your father's health is failing. All this stress is—" I cut her off right there. "Mom, why are you calling me?" There was this long, heavy pause on the line. When she finally started talking again, her tone shifted. It was that exact voice she used to use when I was a kid whenever she needed me to bail someone out. "Owen, we need you to come back home. We need you to help Marina and the little boy. And not just with money. We need you to step in and take Dorian's place." Those words felt like absolute poison hanging in the air. For a second, I honestly thought I was losing my mind and mishearing things. "Say that again," I said, real quiet. "Marina needs real support, Owen, not just a check. She can't handle this by herself." That boy needs a father figure around the house. Someone stable who's actually present. We need you to move in with her and help raise him. I had to sit down right then. Not because I was agreeing to it, but because my legs literally started shaking from the sheer shock of it. Let me make sure I'm hearing you loud and clear, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You want me to pack up my life and move in with the woman who was sleeping with my brother in my own apartment while she was actively planning a wedding with me? You want me to raise the kid they had together? You're asking me to just slide right into Dorian's life and play happy family with his leftovers? She stammered, It's not like that, Owen. Then what exactly is it like? Mom, break it down for me. She took a deep breath, and I could practically hear her shifting gears, trying to build her best pitch. The boy's name is Troy, she said. He's 4, and he's just asking why his dad won't wake up. Marina is completely overwhelmed. Between the medical bills, the mortgage, and trying to hold down a job while raising a kid solo, she's drowning. She needs real help, someone in the house every day. She has you guys, I shot back. She has Dad. She has the exact family that picked her over me 5 years ago. Your father is incredibly sick, Owen. His heart is failing, and this whole nightmare is literally killing him. I'm doing everything I can to hold the pieces together, but I can't be at her house every single day. I can't be what Troy needs. Right, so you guys need a replacement, Dorian, and you immediately thought of your backup son. That is not fair, Owen. I stood right up and started pacing around my living room. Fair? 5 years ago, you sat me down and told me I just had to deal with it because they were in love and she was pregnant. You didn't call me a single time to see if I was breathing. Not on what should have been my wedding day, not on my birthdays, not once in 5 whole years. But the second Dorian breaks himself, suddenly you remember my phone number. We made a lot of mistakes, she said, which had to be the biggest understatement of the century. I know we handled things horribly back then, but you are better than this, Owen. You always have been. You're the responsible one, the one who actually thinks things through. This little boy is completely innocent in all of this, and he deserves some stability. And there it was, the exact same emotional guilt trip I grew up with. Dorian could be completely reckless, selfish, and burn his life to the ground, but Owen was the responsible one who was supposed to grab a broom and clean up everyone else's mess. I'm not asking you to forgive us right this second, she pleaded. I'm just asking you to think about Troy. Think about your family. Family? I repeated back to her. The exact same family that sat me down and told me to get used to being replaced. Dorian made his own bed. He made his choices, you all made yours, and now I'm making mine. Owen, please listen. Your father's will still has you in it. The business, the house. When our time comes, you'll be taken care of. But right now, we need our family to stick together. We need you to step up. And there was the carrot at the end of the stick. This inheritance that I never asked for and never cared about, being waved in front of my face like I was supposed to drop to my knees and be grateful. You keep using that word, family, I told her. But you know what real family actually does? They don't ask you to destroy yourself to fix their screw-ups. They don't expect you to move in with the person who broke you just to raise your brother's kid. If the shoe was on the other foot, my mom's voice suddenly started getting cold and sharp. Dorian would do it for you in a heartbeat. That right there completely snapped whatever was left inside of me. Not my resolve, that was solid as a rock. But that tiny, lingering voice in the back of my head that wondered if I was being too mean or too stubborn completely died in that exact moment. The absolute delusion it took for her to say that out loud. The total fantasy world she had to live in to believe that Dorian, the guy who slept with my fiancée behind my back for half a year, would ever lift a single finger to help me, was so wild that it cleared up everything. They hadn't learned a single thing. They hadn't grown. They were the exact same toxic people who tossed me aside 5 years ago, only now they desperately needed something from me. I felt this huge shift inside my chest. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was just total, icy clarity. You know what, Mom? You're 100% right about one thing, I said, and I could actually hear the hope jump back into her voice when she asked, What's that, sweetie? 5 years ago, you told me family comes first. So let me make this crystal clear. You guys are not my family. You haven't been for 5 years. And whatever happens to Dorian, Marina, or that kid has absolutely nothing to do with me. Owen. Stop it, you don't mean that. We are your flesh and blood. I cut her off entirely. No, you pulled the plug on this family 5 years ago when you sat me down on that couch and told me to accept being thrown away. I didn't end this family, you guys did. I just finally accepted the choice you already made. That's not how it was. We were just trying to do what was best for everybody. I let out a harsh laugh. You mean what was best for Dorian, just like always? I spent my whole childhood watching you make excuses for him, covering up his messes, and handing him everything on a silver platter while I had to beg for scraps of your approval. And when he literally stole the one thing in the world that was mine, you expected me to just smile and take it. We thought you'd understand down the road. Oh, I understand perfectly. I went out and built a whole new life. I'm successful, I make way more money than Dorian ever did. And I have people in my life who actually value me for who I am, not as some backup plan or a safety net. And I did every single bit of it without a drop of help from you. The line went completely dead silent for a minute. Then her voice came back, sounding a lot smaller and desperate. So you're really just going to turn your back on a little kid? Your own nephew? You're going to let Marina struggle all by herself with a 4-year-old while his dad is dying in a hospital room? That kid has a mother, I said blankly. He has grandparents. He's got 3 people who chose to create this entire mess, and 3 people who chose each other over me. That little boy is not my responsibility. He is the direct consequence of your choices. But he's completely innocent. So was I. I shot back. But that didn't stop a single one of you from picking Dorian over me. You want to talk about innocent? I was planning a wedding. I was genuinely excited about my future. And you all sat there and told me to accept being thrown in the garbage like I didn't matter at all. Shifting her tactics again, she whimpered. Your father's will still includes you, Owen. Half the company, half the house, all the investments. Keep it, I said, and my voice sounded like absolute ice. Keep every single dime. I don't want a single thing from any of you. Not your money, not your guilt trips, and definitely not your sudden, convenient need for me. I made my own way in this world, and I don't need anything you have to offer. Owen, please. Her voice completely cracked. What are we supposed to do? And there it was. After everything they did, after 5 years of ignoring my existence, after asking me to play house with my brother's ex and dangling a will like a piece of meat, she was asking me what they were supposed to do. Do exactly what you told me to do 5 years ago, I said. Accept the situation and move on. You picked Dorian. You enabled him your whole life and made him think he could do whatever he wanted without any payback. Well, now you get to live with it. But he's your brother. I don't have a brother, I said, and that was the absolute final nail in the coffin. I had one once, but he died the second he decided my fiancé was worth more than our relationship. The guy lying in that hospital bed is a total stranger to me. A stranger who made a long line of terrible choices that landed him exactly where he is. Owen, you just don't understand the pressure we're under. No, I get it perfectly. Dorian spent his entire life doing whatever the hell he wanted because you never held him accountable for anything. He drank and drove because he never learned that real actions have real consequences. And now you want me to swoop in and fix the disaster you created by never telling him no. I heard her take a shaky breath on the other end, and her voice sounded completely beaten and desperate. We're losing everything, Owen. The business is going under without him there to run the day-to-day. We took out massive loans to pay for his ICU care, we might have to sell the house, and your father's health is completely tanking. We can't afford any of this. We have nothing left. Please, we needed Dorian to keep us afloat, and now... And right there, the real truth finally spilled out from under all the manipulation. This was never about family love or making amends or fixing our relationship. This wasn't about Troy needing a dad or Marina needing a helping hand. It wasn't even about me being the responsible son. They were completely broke, totally desperate, and I was just the last piggy bank they had left to rob. Then it sounds like you have the exact same thing you gave me 5 years ago, I said, keeping my voice colder than I ever thought possible. Absolutely nothing. I hung up the phone. Then I blocked the number. For the first time in 5 years, I felt this massive weight just lift right off my shoulders. A weight I didn't even realize I was still lugging around. I just sat there in my apartment with my phone in my hand, waiting to see if the guilt would hit me. I waited for the doubt, or that nagging little voice telling me I was being too mean, too cold, or that I should have at least sent them some cash. But that feeling never showed up. Instead, all I felt was total, pure clarity. They showed me exactly who they were 5 years ago, and I just needed that one phone call to remind me exactly why I walked away in the first place. Why I built a brand new life 800 miles away and never looked back. The irony of the whole thing wasn't lost on me either. They built Dorian's downfall with their own hands. Every single time they covered for him, made excuses for his terrible behavior, and enabled his worst traits, they were building up to this exact moment. That drunk driving crash wasn't just some random stroke of bad luck. It was the inevitable end of a lifetime of zero consequences. Right then, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Iris. Still on for dinner tomorrow? I smiled, looked at the screen, and typed back, absolutely. The next night, we were over at her apartment. She'd whipped up some pasta, nothing crazy fancy, just the kind of easy, comfortable food you make when you're way past trying to impress each other but not quite at the living together stage yet. You seem totally different tonight, she said, swirling some spaghetti around her fork. Lighter, somehow. I'd been debating all day whether to bring it up. Up until then, we'd kept our pasts pretty close to the chest, both of us dragging around baggage we weren't totally ready to unpack yet. But she'd been completely real with me about her messy divorce, and I figured I owed her the same honesty. I actually got a phone call yesterday, I told her. From my mom. Her eyebrows shot right up. The family you don't talk to? Yeah, I said, and then I laid it all out on the table. Not just the call from yesterday, but the whole story from 5 years ago. Marina, Dorian, that awful conversation in the living room, the wedding that never happened, and their insane request for me to move in with Marina and raise my brother's kid. She sat there and listened without interrupting me once, her face going from total shock to pure anger, and then finally to something that looked a whole lot like deep respect. What did you tell her? Iris asked. I told her no, I said. I told her they made their choice 5 years ago, and I made mine. Then I hung up and blocked her. Iris was quiet for a second, just studying my face across the table. Do you think you'll ever regret it? Not stepping in to help? It was a completely fair question to ask. It was the exact same thing I'd asked myself a million times in therapy, and during those quiet nights when I wondered if cutting my own flesh and blood off completely made me just as bad as them. 5 years ago, I definitely would have. I told her honestly. I would have felt incredibly guilty, obligated, and responsible. But they spent 5 whole years not giving me a single thought. Not one phone call to apologize, to check in, or to just admit that what they did was monstrous. They only called the exact second they needed something from me. That isn't family, Iris. That's just using people. And you don't feel bad about saying no? I feel completely free, I said. And that word came out with a level of certainty that honestly surprised even me. They can't hurt me anymore because they don't have a single thing that I want. There's no approval I'm chasing after, and no relationship I'm trying to salvage. They're just people I used to know. Iris reached right across the table and gave my hand a tight squeeze. Good, she said. You deserve a hell of a lot better than people who only see your value when they need a favor. 3 months later, a letter showed up for me. It was sent to my old company and forwarded over to my current address. The return address was from some law firm I'd never heard of, but I knew exactly what was inside before I even tore open the envelope. My dad had passed away. The paperwork was all about his estate. I just stood there in my kitchen, holding that unopened envelope, and felt absolutely nothing. No deep grief, no anger, not even a shred of curiosity about what was left in the will or what kind of strings were attached to it. I walked right over to the trash can and tossed it straight into the garbage. That same night, I took Iris out to her absolute favorite restaurant. We sat there talking about her big upcoming project at work, the vacation we were planning for next month, and whether we should get a dog or a cat when we finally decide to move in together. The past stayed exactly where it belonged, dead and buried. Because at the end of the day, here's what this whole ride taught me. Some people are never going to understand why you chose to save yourself over sticking with your family. But usually, those exact people are the ones who forced you to make that choice in the first place. I don't hate my family anymore. Honestly, I don't even think about them much at all, and that is the most powerful place I could ever be. They took absolutely everything from me once, but by doing that, they gave me the freedom to build something a million times better. Something real. Something that actually belongs to me. Some doors, once you shut them, stay locked forever. And honestly, I have never been happier in my entire life. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching until the very end. If you really liked this video, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button, share it around, and subscribe to the channel. Have an absolutely great day.